I have a quotation up on the board in my studio by the photographer Stephen Shore that I'm going to paraphrase. He says essentially that seeing something spectacular or beautiful and recognizing a photographic possibility there is not a very big leap. But what he is interested in, what I am interested in, is finding the ordinary and realizing a photographic possibility in that. I grew up here in the Berkshires. I grew up in Pittsfield, and after that I went to school in Troy at RPI. I went there for undergraduate and graduate work as well. I got degrees there in biomedical engineering. And in my last year there at RPI, right before I got my master's, there was an exhibition by the RPI Photo Club. And I went to that exhibition and walked around and looked at all the pictures. And I don't recall any particular images that struck me, but I just thought that this photography thing looks pretty cool. So after that, I worked as an engineer for 2 years, and about a year into it, I had saved enough money to buy my first Nikon 35mm camera. And then the bug bit, and after that, I just sort of changed careers and went into photography. I started photographing in a way that the compositions were much more complex. So I started adding in visual elements and trying to merge content and form by making a very complex composition. One of the early pieces is a photograph of a basketball court with an amusement park in the background. And it was then that I started being very concerned about finding visual motifs and finding shapes, colors, lines, forms that repeat throughout the frame, and very often using things that are near and far. So in that photograph, it's very easy to see the motifs, the main one being the big circle on the basketball court, and then the circle within a circle of the Ferris wheel way in the background. But those progressed all the way up until I think the pinnacle of the complexity was a piece called Tripper's Rides that is just layers and layers of information. And I'm shooting through a Ferris wheel ride, through other structures behind that, and through other structures behind that. I started reading up on complexity science and chaos theory. So I never really lost my interest in science subjects that I had developed at RPI. In general, what complexity theory is about, in the layman's terms, is that when you have any type of system and you keep adding more and more elements to it, okay, you can have an order and you can add a few more things and you have order. At some point it falls into chaos. But at some range between order and disorder, there's something called the edge of chaos. And in the edge of chaos, you have something that emerges that is not just greater than the sum of the parts, but is an entirely new entity. So as I was reading about that stuff, I was thinking about my photographs and thought, that's sort of what I'm trying to do. And so the edge of chaos became a metaphor for the work that I was doing. Most recently, I've been shooting at antique fairs. I'm having a lot of fun with it, but I'm going down lots of different paths now and finding lots of different things. I mean, some of the images that I produced have references to religion, to race, to gender identity, and they're just coming out of these collections of objects that people have in their booths. And then some of them are just kind of overwhelming information overload of kitsch, if you will. It's been incredibly rewarding to know that they're making something that impacts another human being. That somebody looks at it and they get some type of joy out of it, or they look at the world in a way they hadn't looked at it before. And that's really what it's all about in the end.